So thank you very much for the nice introduction. I'm Florian. As said, I'm from Evosoft, and thank you for having me here today at the conference. Just some words about Evosoft so that you can frame it. So we are a digitization company. We are closely connected to Siemens, and we are basically bringing IoT solutions into manufacturing environments. And coming from that, I brought one topic today. It's called AI-based manufacturing. So we heard a lot about AI already. I think we will still hear some more. But my focus is a little bit coming from AI and then also having a look at how can AI be a key lever for realizing a digital product passport, so-called DPP. Just to get an impression, so has anybody heard already of this topic of DPP, digital product passports? If so, maybe you can raise your hand real quick. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so some of you have heard of it already. Have you already dived a little bit deeper into this topic, or just heard of it and that's it? So I assume you heard of it, but you didn't dive into. So maybe we can shed some light into this topic today. And I would like to start with a citation of Steve Jobs, who once said that basically innovation is the thing which distinguishes between a leader and a follower. And I think specifically in industry, and I think also in the cable industry, it has impact on two topics. On the one hand, if you look on the topic of compliance and standards, I think it's important that we don't wait until the standards come up and hit us, and then we actively try to catch up, so that we instead go proactively and shape these standards and pick them up early, the one thing. And the other thing, if you look at technology, that we just don't use a technology because everybody else is using it, and we also want to use it, but turn it around and say, okay, no, we only use those technologies we want to use because we think it brings us a strategic advantage. And the topic of digital product passport and AI, I think, is a topic which brings both topics together. DPP more of a standard and a regulation, and AI more of a technology which has huge potential and which will bring potentially strategic advantages for all of us. But to start with, let's have a short look at the topic of the digital product passport, and let's ask a simple question. So it's a regulation, but is it an obligation we have to do, or is it more of an opportunity we can take to gain advantage? And I think, to be honest, it's somehow both. On the one hand, it's an obligation, so we have to deal with the topic at some point in time, because as you can see here, the EU put a regulation into force last year, so in 2024, the so-called EU regulation for the eco-design for sustainable products. That's something which has been released as part of this European Green Deal. And one key element of this ESPR is basically that all manufacturing companies, so every company who is manufacturing something, needs to provide a so-called digital product passport for their products at some point in time. So there are some industries, we will see later on, which need to do this earlier, some which need to do it later, but as it seems like today, all manufacturing companies need to deal with the DPP sooner or later. And while this is a regulation on the one hand and an obligation, I think it's also a big opportunity to act early and to be actually on the forefront and to differentiate between others who might wait until the standards come up and they need to act. But the question is, what is a DPP? So how can we imagine what is it? So a DPP is basically nothing else than a digital identity of a product. So everybody of us has an ID or a passport, which is our identity, not so much digital, but it's our identity. And that's basically the same thing for a product, a digital and secure identity of a product. And the important thing here, it's not just an identity which says, okay, this is a cable drum, and it has 500 meters of cable on it, but it brings more information. And that's very important because the digital product passport has two dimensions. One dimension is the supply chain, and the other dimension is the life cycle. So this digital identity contains information on the one hand throughout the whole supply chain, so starting with the first raw material supplier until the customer. And it also should combine all information throughout the whole life cycle. So this means beginning with the first product design until the product is recycled again and put back into the supply chain. And to make it more tangible, have a look at the cable drum on the right-hand side. At some point in time, the cable drum might have a badge, maybe not as big as this one, a little smaller, but it has a badge, and this badge contains, for example, a QR code linking to the product passport. So what you can do is you take your smartphone, you just scan this QR code, and you will get direct access to the product passport of that cable drum. And via the product passport, you can access all the data from the supply chain and the life cycle of that product. And just imagine if you're having a technician on site and he needs to get some more information about this cable drum, he can just scan the passport, access any kind of certificates or data from maintenance data or safety information about the product without having to search for data or handle, for example, paper documents and something else. So all the data relevant for this product is available at any time at the fingertips of the user. So that's what we call a digital product passport. So digital identity of each and every product. And by that I mean not the product type, but every instance of a product which I can hold in my hands. Right, so now that we know what the product passport is, let's have a look at the timeline behind and the regulation or the framework. As said before, last year this ESPR was released. In 2024, where it was defined that sooner or later everybody needs to provide a product passport. And we are currently in the so-called preparation phase. This means this ESPR basically defines the boundary of the topic, but it doesn't provide that much details. So we are currently in the preparation phase, meaning from this year and by the end of this year, we have the preparation phase where the details are being worked out. So all the requirements, which data needs to be provided, which industry needs to be included. And in coordination with the industry representatives, basically by the end of this year, it's expected that all the details about the product passport are defined. And then important date is 1st of January 2027. So 1.5 years later, we will have the compliance phase. This means at that point in time, the compliance phase starts, and this means that all companies which are part of the so-called high priority sectors need to provide the digital passport for their products. So that's the date where you need, if you are part of these high priority sectors, where you need to be able to hand out a digital product passport with your products. And that's also when all the enforcement mechanisms and the audits are implemented. So this means 1st of January 2027 is an important date if you are part of the so-called high priority sectors. High priority sectors, you can see here, at the moment it's 8 sectors which are part of these high priority sectors. So this means the battery sector, chemicals, electronics, energy products, textiles, metals, tires and furniture. If you are somehow working or supplying companies in that domain, the topic of the DPP will get relevant for you in 2027. If you're not part of the high priority sectors, I think you have some more time. I think it's 2030, something like this. So you have some more time, but sooner or later also here the regulation will start. So this means 2027 is an important date. At that point in time, the DPP will come into action and needs to be realized. So now the question is, if you are part of these high priority sectors, you have 1.5 years to go, and until then you need to be ready to provide the DPP. And the question is, what does it mean in the whole supply chain? Who needs to do what? We can take a more closer look and see at the supply chain basically. And if we look at this regulation today, it has a strong focus on the producers, so the so-called economic operators of a product, because these producers are the ones which are in charge of putting together the DPP and handing out the DPP with the product. And then the main focus of the DPP is actually going to the right side, meaning to the downstream stakeholders of the supply chain, means that in the end a customer, be it a B2C or B2B customer, can access the DPP to get information about the product if needed. A service and repair company can use the DPP to get some information about service intervals and maintenance specifications, for example. And if a product is being recycled, the recycling companies can use the DPP to get information about what do I need to do, what do I need to consider when recycling the product. So that's the primary focus of this regulation of the DPP, to the right-hand side. But now if you're saying, yeah, that's great because I'm on the left-hand side, I'm more like supplying a producer, I can lean back and wait. I think this might be a little bit too easy because even though if you are on the left-hand side, so if you are a raw material supplier, for example, supplying copper, or if you're producing cables, which are then put into some energy products or electronic products, you will not be the ones who need to provide the DPP, but you will be indirectly impacted by the DPP because your customers, or the producers in the end, they need information from all parties involved in the whole supply chain. Meaning also here, it's very important to understand that even though you are not the economic operator and you are not directly providing the DPP, it is very likely that sooner or later your customers will require you to provide data so that they can put together the DPP for the product. And then when it comes to data provision, the question is, what kind of data could this be? What is it, what I need to provide? And therefore, we can have a look at the different components which are part of the DPP. As I said before, currently it's in the preparation phase. This means it's not 100% fixed, but we currently see 8 different components of information which will very likely be part of the DPP. So what does it contain? So on the one hand, DPP has product information or identification information, like serial numbers or what kind of product is it, what product category. So some kind of master data. Then it can contain recycling information, so information about the recyclability of the product, or if we need to consider some specific disposal instructions in terms of we want to recycle the product. Then, and this is I think very important for the upstream stakeholders in the supply chain, materials and ingredients. So a DPP contains information about the material composition. So what kind of materials are in this product? And also even more important, are there any hazardous substances within the product which need to be taken into account at any time? Then we also have certificates and standards like environmental certificates or compliance with EU standards, the flame retardancy ratings, things like that. Everything which is important or relevant for the product as certificates might be part of the DPP. Then we have sustainability information about the carbon footprint throughout the whole life supply chain, for example. Then we have origin information. I think this is, for example, very important in the furniture industry, proof of origin, so that I know my wood is coming from which region. When we are talking about the textile industry, supply chain is very important, especially in the context of child work, for example, to see which partners are involved. Then we have life cycle information, information about the durability of my product, information about the service life or maintenance and repair instructions. What do I need to consider when I need to? I'm executing some repair activities. And last but not least, we find usage information. For example, operating manual, safety information, things like that which need to be considered. So there's a lot of information in. It's not 100% fixed, so depending on the industry, some of the information are more relevant, some are not so much relevant. This is currently being worked in, but even though if you're, for example, now in an upstream part of the supply chain and you're providing raw material, I think it's very likely that at some point in time you will be required to provide material and ingredients information, sustainability information, and maybe some also certificate or standards information, which can then be part of the DPP. And since this information is handed over through multiple parties in a supply chain, the data management and standardization is a very important topic so that you can hand over the data seamlessly. And here the question is, how do we make sure, or what's a way to implement such a thing in a way that seamless data integration or exchange is ensured? And there's one thing which is currently evolving since a couple of years. It's the so-called asset administration shell. That's technology or a standard data model which has been developed in the Industry 4.0 movement, I would say. And this is basically a data model where you can describe a digital twin of any asset. And for example, a product can be such an asset in a standardized way so that you can then exchange the data with any other party in a supply chain which is also capable of using asset administration shells. And that's very important if you look at the DPP and the whole supply chain, that things like the asset administration shell plays a key role, because you can use this AAS to build a digital twin of your product throughout the life cycle. So for example, if you have a look at the left-hand side, if you're designing a new product, you first of all have a product design. Then once the product is released and the customer can order the product, at some point in time you will receive an order from a customer resulting in a production order. Then you start production, and then you do a quality inspection and ship it to the customer. And through all these steps, additional data is actually generated and composes the whole digital twin of your product. And using, for example, the asset administration shell, you can start, and as you define the product design, you start adding information to the asset shell. Once the customer is ordering the product, you get some order information, you add information about the order to your asset, and at that point in time, it's not only the product, in this case a dose, but it's getting the specific instance. This exact dose which is produced for the customer is then my digital twin. Then I'm going into production. I'm producing data. I have parameters in my shop floor. I have environment conditions, and so on and so forth. And at that point in time, I can integrate my production. Topic here is OT/IT integration into my systems and add information from the production into the digital twin, so that again I have information from my production in my product instance. And then it goes on. I do my quality inspection. I add the data. I ship it to the customer. Customer can use the asset administration shell and add usage information also to that shell and extend the data throughout the life cycle, so that in the end, if it reaches the recycler, for example, the recycler can know exactly how has this product been used, what's the condition of the different things, components in my product. And by using such an standard data model, it is ensured that the data can be exchanged without any problems throughout all parties, and you can basically use the data throughout the whole life cycle. And very important here, it's not only a thing which you can use to realize the digital product passport, so to fulfill your obligation, but by collecting the data and by having always a digital twin which is representative of your real product, you also have the possibility to realize other use cases. For example, it's actually a foundation to do to implement paperless production, to get rid of any paper documents, to get more transparency about your supply chain, to think about predictive maintenance topics, and so on and so forth, and also to think about how does my product behave in the field, and maybe how can I improve my service intervals and things like that. So that's the foundation to not only realize the DPP, but also add additional use cases on top of that.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is it fine right now?
Sure, go ahead.
This data, is this collected by each company Or is there going to be like a central company?
How
will this be managed? Because each company then has to make sure that this data is available for 10 years or 20 years.
Yeah, so since there are some company boundaries, especially if you ship the product to the customer, and you have usage data, the company which is using the product is actually in charge of collecting the data. But the point here is that using a standard model is that if the company who's using it wants to share this information with the recycler or with the supplier, it can exchange the data because it's based on the same standard data model. But there is up to now no central, I would say, data or governance platform where you can put all the data in throughout the life cycle. That's, at least today, not in place. So the data exchange still needs to be established throughout the parties. Okay, so far to the DPP, and now the title is about AI. Question is, how does AI come into this display now? And yeah, we heard it already today, and I think we will hear it some more time. AI, since 2 or 3 years, is now more than just a buzzword. Yeah, it's coming up here and there, and actually also scalable productive use is there today. In general, we consider generative AI and analytical AI. To be honest, today, if you're talking about AI, I think 95% is generative AI, but we should not forget the classical AI where you use actually data, analyze the data, and then do predictions and derive predictions from that. But no matter which kind of AI you are using, the potentials for manufacturing in general are huge. Yeah? Like you can use it to predict product qualities. You can use it to reduce operating costs. We have seen the agents today. So the potential is enormous. There are also some things to consider, and also you need to have the people available to implement things like that, but the potential is huge. And also the potential in context of DPP is huge, because AI is one of the key factors when it comes to a future-proof implementation of the DPP. Yeah? Because there are multiple factors which are easier when you combine it with AI technology. Yeah? 4 of them are mentioned here. So when it comes to data acquisition, when it comes to compliance, when it comes to quality control or forecasting optimization, if you combine both things and use AI technologies also to realize your DPP, this is a key factor to also keep your DPP future-proof. And how does it look like? For example, when it comes to automated data acquisition, you can use AI in the meantime to integrate your data easier than before. You can use it to harmonize and standardize your data model so that you can use things like the asset administration shell. When it comes to regulatory topics and data security, you can use AI to monitor that you are compliant to the regulatories on the one hand, and even more important, since you are sharing data with the DPP, I'm very confident that you don't want to share all the data. So there's some data which is sensitive, and you need to make sure that you don't share sensitive data with other parties. So that's also something which you can monitor and control using AI. When it comes to quality control, you can use AI, Vision AI, for example, to recognize patterns, to automatically classify your products, so that the data of this classification is automatically transferred into the DPP, and then you have consistent data in your DPP. And you can also use it for forecasting and optimization, so you can predict the service life. I think even better if you apply AI methodologies. You can optimize the maintenance intervals and actually optimize the whole supply chain, not only locally in your company, but with all your partners in the supply chain by applying data-driven analytics with data throughout the supply chain. So all in all, DPP and AI, they have a strong potential. It's not only fulfilling the regulatory requirements, I have to provide data for the DPP, but it brings also an opportunity to go beyond that and use the DPP and AI basically as a starting point to realize other use cases which help you, for example, to increase your production efficiency, to reduce operating costs. Yeah, it helps you to increase also transparency along the whole value chain, because if you exchange data with your partners, it helps you to get more transparent, and you can optimize the collaboration with your partners. And you are future-proofing, because you're adapting to regulatory requirements early. And you adapt it in a flexible way so that you can keep up with the market dynamics better than if you would just do it actually in a classical way and just wait until you have to act, and then if you act just pragmatically but not combining the things together. All in all, the question is, it's a big topic and there are many, many things to consider, but how should I start, or what's a good way to start? And as always, there's many ways which lead to Rome. And we would recommend, don't start implementing from the scratch and start with an implementation. I think it's very important to just think big, but start small. Start with something like a readiness check for yourself, where you just get a feeling, okay, what does it mean, DPP? What is it about in my industry? What are the implications for my industry? How does the DPP fit into my strategy? And even more important, think about your goals in that topic. Do you just want to fulfill the requirements which come with the regulation and just provide the data which I need to provide, and that's it? Or do you want to do more and use the chance to also open up and integrate your data in the supply chain and try to realize other use cases with that? So I think that's a good starting point, because then you have a common understanding where you want to go. And then you can iteratively move on by having a look at the scope and discover basically the topic. You can see, if I want to provide the data, where's my data, in which systems is my data lying, how do I get to the data, do I have all the data available, or maybe I need to get data from my suppliers as well. So in the end, you would have something like a fit gap analysis to see where I'm good already, where do I need to do something, and then you can create a rough outline of how do you want to start with that. And then you can successively move on and do a solution design, implement it, and then later on, if required, operate your solution in a way that brings you a value add. Right. So in closing, the DPP is a topic which will be coming sooner or later to everybody of us. So it's an obligation we have to do. But it's also a chance, an opportunity to do more than just the obligation. Combine it with upcoming technologies, in this case AI, because this will help you be more sustainable, more transparent, and also more efficient in your production. Take the chance to see if this brings you a competitive advantage, and if you see that it has a competitive advantage for you, take it and be a leader in your industry. But still think big up, but start small. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. So are there any questions?
Like the cables, we have our international standards that we can follow, and everything is clear. And managing the big data and how we equip ourselves to be ready for these projects. If there's any international administration, like if you remember when we started with the barcoding and this stuff, it was internationally organized and known for everybody. Are in the short term we will be ready with this to government all over the world?
I think this is the worldwide topic. I think is an interesting topic because, as you've seen, it's an EU regulation, and especially since round about half a year, there's some kind of another direction coming from the US, and
we deal within the EU or the US. So EU as a whole sets that we like the CPR. We have many things. Personally, I'm supplying mostly from Egypt to the EU. So I follow technically, I follow coding, data-wise and management, but how to see it governed for future, to apply these.
I think you mentioned the CPR, so
it's regulatory item, so
And also this is not clarified because I also read that there are currently activities going on in harmonizing the SPR and the CPR because they have some overlap, and and I think that's why this preparation phase is still ongoing, so the things are not finalized. And yeah, so I think that's why it is not an easy topic, especially the standardization part. The technology is there, but also there are some standard models for different industries available and for different kinds of information. But if they will be this worldwide standard, or at least the European-wide standard, I think only time will tell. So it's as always, standardization is a very tough and time-consuming topic. Yeah.
But I think it's mandatory to have this on board, right, 100%.
Yeah. If you want to really have transparency throughout the supply chain, the whole supply chain, then you need it. Yeah. I mean, you can also do it individually. You pass your data to your customer, and
it's like our
but
said, asked there. It's I pass, let's say, a polymer from China till Brazil.
Yeah.
So how to trace it and how to see your lifetime, whatever.
Yeah.
So it has to be all governed.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree. Yeah.
A very simple question, perhaps I missed it. How would it be attached to the product?
What exactly do you mean?
If you say you have the digital product passport, how do I attach the passport to the product? Because you mentioned a lot of different products like tires and different things. So what is the way how to attach it to the product?
I think it depends on the product, but yeah, the classical way would be to have a QR code somewhere with a unique
Which would
ID.
be difficult on a tire, for example.
Yes. To be honest, I don't know how this will be on a tire, for example, but I guess it could also be somewhere within the tire. But this, yeah, it depends on the product, but it needs to be a steady somewhere where it doesn't vanish by time. Yeah. So, yeah, that's an important topic, but depending on the product, I would say. Yeah. Could also be RFIDs. So it doesn't have to be a visual thing. I mean, would also be an option, but I think that's also a topic which everybody or every economic operator who is providing the DPP needs to consider what's the best way to make sure that the information is always accessible.
Especially if you want to have some standardization, right? At least for one product type, you would need to have a standard way of doing it and reading it. Otherwise, it would be difficult.
For a product type of a, again, then.
I mean, for example, you say the tires have to have it. I know the tire industry a little bit.
Yeah.
So Michelin needs to do the same as Goodyear and Bridgestone and so on. And all the Chinese need to do the same way of coding it into the tire, otherwise it wouldn't work.
I think here again it depends then if the tire industry is setting a standard or if every manufacturer is free to do it as he wants, basically.
No, sorry, nobody's free to do anything what he wants here. Just organizing the supply chain with all the data. And I answer, if I supply the wire for the tire, I got the steel from company X. Company X got the billet from company Y. So you are tracing it till you, as you said, till you scrap it or recycle it.
Yeah.
So you have the full historical data for all the chain involved with all the qualities related.
Yeah.
This is how I see it.
Exactly. So when it comes to data.
All from the scrap, from the beginning till the end.
Yeah.
But the question is still depending on how to organize this data flow between us. We have to have unified
standards. Standards, yeah. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much.